What do goals and habits have in common? How can you set financial goals you'll actually achieve? And what did going to Jenny Craig teach me about motivation? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 9th episode of the DoughRoller Podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Welcome to, it's the 9th episode of the DoughRoller Podcast, but it's day 2 of our 31-day money challenge. Yesterday, if you missed the episode, I had an opportunity to interview Gene Chatsky about financial freedom, what it is, how you achieve it, what holds people back. You can check that out if you haven't listened to it. Just go to DoughRoller.net/podcast 8. That's podcast followed by the number 8. Today, we're going to take a look at financial goals. Since it's the new year, it seemed like an appropriate topic to tackle, and I think it's a very important one. Before we get into it, though, let me give a quick shout out to our 2 sponsors who have both, with their support, have made this 31-day money challenge possible. The first is Betterment. Betterment's an online platform where you can easily and safely invest your money. You simply pick how much you want in stocks and bonds, and Betterment does the rest, investing your money into a series of low-cost ETFs. I've used Betterment for a couple of years now and have been very happy. And our second sponsor is Personal Capital. They offer free software that allows you to track all of your investments, including Betterment. I track all of my investments, including what I have with Betterment, through Personal Capital. It also slices and dices your portfolio to show you your asset allocation and, very importantly, the fees you're paying for your investments. So you can give Personal Capital a try at personalcapital.com, and you'll find Betterment at betterment.com. Thanks to both of them for sponsoring the 31-day money challenge. So financial goals, when you talk about New Year's resolutions, of course, they're not all related to money. We may have New Year's resolutions related to health or relationships, our home, our job, which of course can relate to money as well. But it seems that a lot of New Year's resolutions revolve around, in some aspect, of money. And I think there's actually some debate as to just how useful New Year's resolutions are. And I've even read a number of articles debating on just how useful goal setting is. I can tell you in my experience, setting goals has been helpful, but perhaps not as helpful as I would have thought. I mean, I've set some goals, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the show, that were life-changing and very helpful. But my personality is not the kind of, I'm not the one to have, 5 New Year's resolutions and check them off throughout the year as I achieve them all. I'm more like the person who sets a few New Year's resolutions and by about January 20th, I forget about them. But I think if we set goals in the right way, they can really change our lives, particularly our financial lives. And when you think about money and goals, there's really a lot of goals you could imagine. You could a goal could be to max out your 401k or your IRA, or to get out of credit card debt, or to save an emergency fund, or to buy your first home. I mean, the list really can go on and on. And so it seemed like an important topic to tackle. And so what I want to do today is give you at least what I've found to be helpful when I've found goal setting useful, how to set goals first, because I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And then some tips on actually achieving them. And so to get started, let's talk about setting goals. And there are 4 things that I try to keep in mind when I set financial goals. And the first one is to consider the past. I can think back in my life at times when I set goals and they really motivated me, and I worked towards those goals and I achieved them. But I can also think back at times when I either didn't achieve the goal, or perhaps I did and then reverted back and got into more financial trouble. The kind of thing where you get a credit card paid off, but then lo and behold, a few months later, you've got more credit card debt. And so I think it's important as you set goals to think about your history and how when you've had success in setting and achieving goals, what do you attribute that success to? And when you weren't so successful, why is that? Maybe you lacked motivation. Maybe it just wasn't the right time. Perhaps you encountered something unexpected, and it was perhaps something out of your control. But I think it's worth thinking about that as you set goals in 2014. The second thing, and it's somewhat related, is I think we really need to tap into what motivates us. Because when I think back on the goals that I achieved, and I've got a couple in mind, both of which I'll share with you a little bit later. But in both cases, because of the circumstances at that time in my life, I was highly, highly motivated. And at times it was just because of the circumstances. But it reminds me of a time I was in law school, and my wife and I, we lived up in Boston, and we both wanted to lose weight. And so we went to Jenny Craig, and we filled out a form they had for us. And one of the questions they asked us was how motivated we were. And they gave us a little blank space where you could put a number from 0 to 10. Well, I was highly motivated at the time. And so I wrote in an 8, and I thought that was pretty good. Well, the lady there, I guess an intake counselor or whatever they were, looked at my sheet, and she saw that I'd written an 8, and she looked at me in a very serious way and said, "What would it take for you to be more motivated?" And I thought about that for a minute, and I looked at her, and I said, "Well, I guess I'd have to be fatter." I thought that was a very honest answer. For some reason, she didn't like it. But it struck me as, sometimes our circumstances motivate us to change. And in that case, I was highly motivated. I thought an 8 was pretty good. Maybe I should have written a 10. But my circumstances there, I was highly motivated to lose weight. And when I think back on financial goals, there have been times when I've been highly motivated to get out of debt. And different things motivate different people. What may motivate me may not motivate you at all. But I think if we're going to set goals and actually achieve them, we have to understand what motivates us and tap into that motivation. I mean, sometimes you're just motivated out of need. You're just desperate. You've got no choice but to buckle down and handle your money better. Or maybe you're just fed up with living month to month. You're just sick of it. I've certainly been there before. But whatever is motivating you, figure out what it is and tap into it. It will help you both in deciding on what goals are best for you, but it'll also help you to achieve them. And then the third thing is what I call being realistically unrealistic. There's a lot of literature on goal setting, and some will say, you don't want to set too many goals. You'll overwhelm yourself. You don't want to set unrealistic goals or you'll get discouraged. But, you don't want to make the goals too easy. And it's like, okay, it's like too hot, too cold, too big, too small. What exactly is the right kind of goal? And in my mind, I think about being realistically unrealistic. Some people call this a stretch goal, and it brings me to the first of two goals that I want to share with you today. For me, one's financial and one is not. This one is the financial goal. And it occurred 7 years ago, actually shortly before I started the DoughRoller blog. I was in my workshop at home, and I was listening to Dave Ramsey. And I've read a couple of his books, but I'm not one to regularly listen to his show. But for some reason, I was in my shop. I was 40 years old at the time, and I was listening to the Dave Ramsey show. And if you ever listen to it, you know that he'll have folks call on and that have gotten out of debt, and they yell that they're debt-free. And so a number of people were on his show, and they were all screaming that they were debt-free. And I think just a combination of factors in my own life and hearing that show, it just really resonated with me. And I thought, I want to be debt-free. I'm tired of debt. I'm tired of the restrictions it places on my choices in life. I'm tired of having to be chained to a job because at that time I had credit card debt. My wife and I had school loans. We're 40. We were 40 then. We had school loans. And we had home equity line of credit. And of course, we had a mortgage. I was more focused on the non-mortgage debt, the home equity, the school loans, and the credit card debt. But it just, maybe you've been there. You get to a point and it's enough. I can't take it anymore. I got to do something. And that Dave Ramsey show just resonated with me. And I wrote down on a piece of paper, real simple, I will be debt-free by the time I'm 50. And I meant everything, including my mortgage. Now, that was 7 years ago. I'm 47 today. Now, I think that was a realistically unrealistic goal. I mean, it wasn't insane, but if you just looked at the numbers, the math, if you did the math at the time, I couldn't see how I would accomplish it. Something would have to change. But, I gave myself 10 years. That's a long time. And I'm happy to report today we've paid off our school loans. We've paid off all of our credit card debt. We've paid off our home equity line of credit. And now I'm 47 and we're chipping away at our mortgage. And I think, God willing, we'll have that paid off by the time I'm 50. We'll see. But it's the kind of goal that I think it makes you stretch. It's not easy, but it's not insane. And, where that is for you is something only you can decide. But I think it's important to find that sweet spot. And, what I think of is what Casey Kasem, the radio personality, he always signs off the air by saying, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. That's what I think of about setting good goals. You got to find something that challenges you, but is not so impossible that it discourages you. And for me, at age 40, getting out of debt, by the time I was 50, we'll see if I actually accomplish it. I think so, but we'll see. But that hit the sweet spot, and that's a very important thing to get right as you think about financial goals. And then the fourth thing, in terms of setting goals, is that it's very important to make your goals specific and actionable. Let me tell you what I mean. We could set a goal of something like achieve financial freedom. And certainly this 31-day money challenge is about moving closer and closer to financial freedom. And yesterday we talked about what that means. But as a goal, it's really not that great of a goal because it's not very specific. Financial freedom, what does it mean? It may mean something different to different people. So the simple goal of achieving financial freedom really doesn't meet this test. It's just not specific enough. Another example would be getting out of credit card debt. Now that's a specific goal, but I would say by itself it's not enough. Why? It's not actionable. You really need to boil your goals down to an actionable plan. So a goal by itself isn't enough. It needs to be specific, but it needs to have an actionable plan. Think of it this way. For each goal that you have, what's the first thing you're going to do to achieve that goal? What's the first step you're going to take? Even if, like in my case, it was a 10-year goal to get out of debt. My first step was, and this sounds a bit high level, but my first step was don't go into any more debt. Swear off credit cards. Do not charge anything. And actually, just to give you to round out the story a little bit, I was challenged almost immediately because we were trying to buy some furniture for our living room. And the furniture company wanted to offer us 0% interest for a year. I mean, how can you beat 0%? And I just said to my wife, look, one, if we do that, we'll likely buy more furniture than we need or can afford. And two, what if we don't pay it off in 12 months? So we said thanks, but no thanks. But that's a very, actionable, concrete step, swearing off credit. No more charging cards. And so again, your goals, they need to be specific, but they need to be followed up with an actionable plan. And that gets us to sort of the second half of financial goals, and that is, all right, you find a goal, you think about your history with goal setting and what's worked and what hasn't. You found out, where you're motivated, what you really want to accomplish. You come up with a realistically unrealistic goal, something that stretches you but is not crazy. And it's specific and you think you can make it actionable. Terrific. Now, how do we go about achieving that goal? So when it comes to achieving goals, I think there are a number of things that you can do and should do that will increase your chances of success. And I want to cover 7 things. The first one is what I call personalizing your goal. And let me give you an example. A perfect goal for someone with respect to money is getting out of credit card debt. It's probably a goal a lot of people have. And on its surface, it seems like, getting out of credit card debt is getting out of credit card debt. Imagine two people with, let's just say, $10,000 in credit card debt. That seems like a very identical goal, right? But depending on your specific circumstances, those two, that goal could be very different for one person than it is another. And let me explain. Imagine the first person, she has $10,000 in credit card debt because of some medical expenses she had. She, before that, always spent less than she made. She was very good with her money, paid off her credit cards in full each month, never had credit card debt. And then because of medical issues, ended up with $10,000 in debt. And then imagine another person who didn't have any medical bills, but he just liked to spend money. He bought clothes he couldn't afford, went on vacations, went out to eat a lot, bought the latest eye gadgets, and over time racked up $10,000 in credit card debt and kind of goes month to month paying the minimum balance and barely getting by. Well, they both have a similar goal, getting out of credit card debt, but really the challenges they face are very, very different. On the one hand, the first person with medical bills certainly has a lot of work ahead of her, but it sounds like, for the most part, she has good control over her finances and managing her money, whereas the second person doesn't. And he's got a lot of issues to deal with in terms of his budget and prioritizing his spending and, frankly, just saying no to himself a little more. So the first thing I would say is personalize your goal to your specific circumstances. Another example of this would be the difference between someone who is married and someone who is single. When you're setting financial goals and you're married, you are going to have to involve your spouse, right? I mean, it's not something you can typically do on your own, and of course, what you do affects him or her, as opposed to someone who's single, and obviously, they don't have to concern themselves with that. So, the first thing I would say is to personalize your goal to your specific circumstances. The second thing is I would remove bad choices as much as you can. Think about someone who's dieting. The last thing you want to do is to keep a lot of unhealthy food in the house. Well, the same is true for personal finance goals. And getting out of credit card debt is a perfect example. If you're having trouble saying no to the credit card, there are things you can do to remove those options. So you're less likely to charge up your card. Obviously, you could go to the extreme of closing your account. You don't have to do that. You can just cut up the card without closing the account, or you can just leave the cards at home, or perhaps you can leave the cards with a trusted friend or family member. That may be a little dangerous, but the point is you can take steps to make it harder for you to make bad choices. And I think doing that will certainly increase your chances of success. The third thing is to automate wherever you can. This is something that Gene Chatsky mentioned yesterday in the show. And this works so well with so many financial goals. A perfect example is with a 401k, where you set up your contributions, they automatically come out of your check. And frankly, after a while, you don't even think about it. They're just gone. I do that with my 401k at work. I have automated contributions made to my account at Betterment. And it just comes out of my checking account every month, and I don't think about it. So as you think about your financial goals and how to execute them, automate them wherever you can. And by the way, in addition to increasing the chances of success, it also makes your life simpler. It's one less thing you got to worry about. I automate a lot of things related to my money. I automate as many bill payments as I can, from the garbage to utilities to my cell phone to my mortgage. So automation is a great thing, and it certainly is a tool you should be using to achieve your financial goals. The fourth thing is to set interim goals. And this is particularly important when you have a goal that's going to take some time to achieve, not unlike mine, where I set a goal of being debt-free in 10 years. I mean, 10 years is a long time. And I had interim goals. My first goal was to pay off my my high-interest credit cards. And achieving that felt great. Then I wanted to tackle my school loans. And again, we achieved that. And then we went to the home equity line of credit. And so we had these interim goals. And I even do that now with my mortgage, even though we're down to this final debt. I have interim goals that are pegged to the amount of the debt. It just feels good when, as your debt goes down and down, you cross certain thresholds. And so I do that now even with the mortgage. And the thing about setting interim goals is it really helps keep you motivated, particularly when, again, you're setting goals that will take some time to accomplish. The fifth thing is, and this is I think critical, and it's track your progress. In some way, have a sense as to what you've achieved. And one thing about tracking your progress, I mentioned in setting goals, they should be specific and actionable. One way to tell if your goals are specific and actionable is to ask yourself, can I track my progress? If you can track your progress, your goal is specific and it's actionable. If you can't track your progress, you may want to rethink your goal. And in the case of credit card debt, I used to just track it online. I had all my accounts linked. And I think at the time I was using mint.com, and I could log in and see where we stood. You might want to write out your if you're getting out of debt, the amount of your debt on an index card and stick it to the mirror in the bathroom. Today, I track my progress through Personal Capital. That's just what I use. I also track my progress through a spreadsheet. In fact, I'm gonna pull this up as we go through this. I'm looking at what is a net worth spreadsheet that I keep. It's something I'll be talking about in a future show. But as I look at it now, I can see my progress on my mortgage. I've got the year of this past year, 2013, up. Actually goes back to November of 2012, and I can see the balance of my mortgage each month as it went down. So there's a lot of different ways to track your progress. I wouldn't say there's any one right way. But I think tracking your progress is important. It's important for a couple of reasons. One, I think it keeps you motivated as you see yourself hitting milestones. But it also, one thing we can do, and this is particularly true with New Year's resolutions, you forget about them after a while. You make them, and then, like I said, a month later, you've completely forgotten about them. But if you're tracking your progress in a way that it's in your face, you're not going to forget about your financial goals. And so tracking your progress is very important. The sixth thing is to get help. And in the world of finances, there's a lot of ways you can get help. You can talk to a certified financial planner. Sometimes it's just a matter of a trusted friend or family member who can hold you accountable. And this brings me to the second story I wanted to tell you about my own goals. And this one is not related to finances, but it's where I got help, and it made all the difference in the world. And here's what happened. When I was in college, I guess now a long time ago, 25 years ago, I hurt my back. I was playing intramural basketball, and I hurt my back and kind of twisted it, and just, I went off the court. It was one of those things I tried to shake it off, and a week later I was playing softball, and I was up to bat, and I swung the bat, and I could just feel and hear my back crack right up my back. The whole thing, just crack, 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 crack. It was awful. And I hobbled off the field and ended up in the hospital the next day. This was before they had MRIs. That's how old I am. But they took an X-ray. It was negative. They gave me a lot of drugs, sent me home. And, it got better. But as I got older, it started to give me more and more problems until about 10 years ago when I heard it again. I think I was training for the Marine Corps Marathon. And I heard it again. My days of running were over. And for nearly 10 years, I suffered with back pain every single day. I'd wake up in the morning, my hip was sore. And I was telling my wife this, I'm in my then I guess late 30s into my 40s. What's this going to be like when I'm, God willing, I'm 60 or 70? And I tried acupuncture, chiropractors. I had a physical therapist. My back would go out on me, and I would be couldn't walk for a week, and it was really bad. And one day I was at my physical therapist, and he said, he had a back issue himself. He said, well, I work out with a guy. You ought to, he's got a gym, and he trains people, and he's terrific. Why don't you go talk to him? So I did. And by the way, if you happen to live in Northern Virginia, it's called Underground Athlete. Give Justin Case a call. He's phenomenal. So anyway, about a year and a half ago, I walked into this Underground Athlete, and I was, suffering. And it's kind of like if you're familiar with CrossFit, it's similar, but it's not a chain. This is a location just in Northern Virginia. And he slowly but surely, we just started exercising. But he would have me do exercises that I would have never thought of on my own. And, of course, I scheduled a time to go in about 3 days a week. And so I had him to help motivate me and to keep me on track. And I was motivated myself, but there were certainly days when, you didn't want to get out of bed and go work out. But I knew I had an appointment and he would be there. And so, in I went. And over time, it's made all the difference in the world. My back today is better than it's been since I was in my early 20s. And it took some time. And I had some setbacks along the way that when I started working out with them, about 2 weeks into it, I actually threw my back out again. Doing, if you work out, you'll know what this is, a Romanian deadlifts with pink kettlebells, which are about the lightest. My back went out. I was out for a week. When I went back in, the first exercise he had me do was to lay on my back and roll onto my stomach without moving my arms or legs, which, by the way, is harder than it may sound. But in any event, the point is, I know I've gotten off on this story. The point is this: getting help can make all the difference in the world, both because of the motivation, they hold you accountable, and because of the knowledge that they have. The seventh and final thing I want to share today about achieving goals is the importance of developing good habits. Habits in and of themselves, are very helpful. We do so much day to day habitually. We don't think about it, and in some ways it helps us set routines and be productive and be efficient. But as we all know, we can have bad habits, and there are good habits that maybe we haven't developed yet. And when it comes to achieving financial goals, I think it's important to break down that goal to the level of a habit. And that's particularly true when it comes to spending. And one of the things I've found is that simply trying to break a bad habit is by itself is difficult to do, but it becomes much easier if you think about it in terms of replacing it with a better habit. One thing I did recently, I just noticed that I was going to Starbucks all the time. Part of it was to work. I just enjoy going to Starbucks and working on my laptop there. And I'll go in and I'll get a mocha. It's both expensive and not good for me. And so I was trying to think about that, and it occurred to me that my reason for going had as much to do with the atmosphere, just wanting to get out of the house and work at a Starbucks as much as it did, buying an expensive drink. And so one of the things I started doing was going to the library instead. We have a fantastic library here. Internet speed is terrific. It's very comfortable. And I found that was just as good for me in terms of, a way to get out of the house and work in a different environment, just get a sort of a change of environment for a bit. And I found that by doing that, I kind of met the need of getting out of the house without the expense and the calories of a mocha. And so as you think about your goals and the habits that you need to change, don't just try to stop a bad habit. Try to replace it with a good habit. And habits can affect not just how we spend. Bad habits can affect how you invest, for example. I mean, I know folks that watch their investment portfolios every minute of the day when the market is open. And at times it can lead them to make bad decisions that hurt them in the long run, constantly buying and selling. And so one of the things I've done, one of the habits I've developed is that when I know the market is down, you find through just people I talk to at work, you almost always, you can't avoid knowing how the market's doing. But I just don't go look at my portfolio. I just don't go look at it. And then I don't have to worry about it because I know the best thing for me is not to sell when the market's going down. And that helps me accomplish that. So think about the goals that you've set for yourself this year, financial and otherwise, and think about particularly the bad habits that perhaps got you into a situation, whether it's credit card debt or not having an emergency fund. Think about those habits and try to replace those bad habits with good ones. Really so much of what we accomplish in life is not based on the big decisions, but rather the little decisions we make every day. Aristotle is quoted as saying, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." And I think that's so true here. And if we can change our habits, it will not only give us a better shot at achieving our short-term financial goals, but it really will set us up for long-term financial freedom. So I hope you found this episode on setting and achieving goals helpful. I hope it will help you set good financial goals for yourself and your family in 2014 and achieve them. If you want to share your financial goals, head on over to speakpipe.com/DoughRoller. You can leave a message with your name and your top financial goal of 2014. I'm already starting to receive voicemail messages and emails with questions that folks would like me to cover over this 31-day money challenge. I received one voicemail about getting out of a timeshare without losing money. Received emails about when to take Social Security. And I received another email about mortgages and what are debt ratios and how do you get a mortgage if you're self-employed. So I'm going to be covering those issues over the next during this 31-day money challenge. But certainly feel free to leave your questions or comments or your top financial goal. Again, it's speakpipe.com/DoughRoller. And that brings our episode to a close. As always, you can email me at dr@doughroller.net. I read and respond to every single email. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so to this podcast. You can do so at doughroller.net/iTunes. That will redirect you to the iTunes page where this podcast resides. From there, you can subscribe and leave a review. The show notes for this podcast can be found at doughroller.net/podcast9. That's podcast followed by the number 9. And if you're not a subscriber to our weekly newsletter, you can do so at doughroller.net/newsletter. It's easy to do. It's free. We send out a weekly newsletter at 8 p.m. every Saturday that's packed full of resources and tips to help you make the most of your money. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.